Hey class, in this unit I wanted to go over the article that deals with the anti-Mexican sentiments or the origins of the anti-Mexican sentiments. And the reason why I wanted to go over it briefly is because this article fits really well with our current political environment. So hear me out. During the administration of President Donald Trump, or former President Donald Trump, he created unprecedented racial conflicts. We thought that during Obama, the US had become a post racial society free of racial prejudice and discrimination. However, how wrong we were. Since the beginning of 2017, over 100 bomb threats have been made against the Jewish community centers and schools. Minorities, such as Muslims, blacks, Latinos, they all have expressed fears over racial relations under the past administration. We all saw in the news the mass killing of El Paso, Black Lives Matters, Charlottesville riots, and the most recent, the U.S. Capitol riots, that are all undeniably topics of race and racism that we're facing in America and many other parts of the world. But the reality is that those of us teaching ethnic studies, we know that race and racism are not new issues and they are very present. The past decade of the 2000s, scientists completed the Human Genome Project, making it finally possible to examine human ancestry with genetics. Scientists have since tackled topics such as human migration out of Africa and around the world, and it is not just scientists who are excited about human genetics. Companies like 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, and Ancestry, for about $100, you can trace your heritage. So race is so complex. Does it still mean anything? In the biological and social sciences, the consensus is clear. Race is a social construct, not a biological attribute. Today, scientists prefer to use the term ancestry to describe human diversity. Ancestry really reflects the fact that human variations do have a connection to the geographical origins of our ancestors. With enough information about someone's DNA, scientists can make a reasonable guess about their ancestry. However, unlike the term race, it focuses on understanding how someone's history unfolded, not how they fit into one category and not another. So you might wonder if a Guatemalan indigenous person looks so different from a Scandinavian, how they could not be from distinct groups. Even if most scientists reject the concept of race as a biological concept, race exists undeniably as a social and political concept. But I'm sure today you hear the word of white privilege, of being privileged, and the fact that the popular classification of race are based on skin color, with other relevant features, including height, eyes, and hair. Those physical differences may appear, and they have an impact on how you're being perceived and judged. So today it's really hard to exclude, based on the fact that we as humans have been estimated to share 99.9 of our DNA with each other. The few differences that do not exist reflect differences in environments and external factors, not core biology. Despite the scientific consensus that humanity is more alike than unlike, sadly the long history of racism is a somber reminder that throughout human history, race continued to be a justification for discrimination and killings. If you ever take my 101 class, I really cover the concept of ethnocentrism, and the definition deals with that cultural sophistication can only be accomplished by Europeans. And I'll give you an example. When the Spanish arrived in the New World, they were baffled by the astonishing beauty of the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. The architectural and engineering achievements were compared to Greece Egypt, and other cities of Europe. There was an incredible European conceit that the pagan, godless people of the New World could not have possibly built these magnificent cities without some sort of inspiration or guidance from the Old World. So I'm going to give you a small introduction about your first chapter that deals with the origins of anti-Mexican sentiment in the United States by Raymond Paredes. Raymond tracks down the development of anti-Mexican sentiments in the U.S., reviewing historical sources on the first encounters between Anglo-Americans and Mexicanos in the early 19th century. Raimundo also covers the animosity that took place between the English and the Spanish. It was based on religion. At this point, the church has split in two. You have English Protestants who view Catholics as devil worshippers. They thought actually the Pope himself was the devil. So they took advantage of Bartolomé Las Casas' account, uh, a book that appeared in England during the paper war between the European nationalists and the Spanish rulers, describing how the Spanish managed to cut the native population of America by 20 million. And I'm going to quote, in an astonishing display of brutality. So this story gave birth to the Black Legend, firmly placing the term in the English mind and letting the world know that the Spanish were evil. So by the time you have all these Protestants coming into the New World in the 13 colonies, you have so many anti-Catholic and Hispanophobia literature coming from England. Most of the stories depict the Spaniards as corrupted, jealous, and cruel people. One of the biggest followers of this phobia was William Bradford. He believed that God protected Protestants, true believers, from the evil designs of the Spanish. I don't think back then they were using the word terrorist, but in 1698, for example, in New York, they passed a law that forbids Catholics to hold weapons, and they also required to pay bonds as security of a good behavior. So there was a lot of restriction for Catholics as they were coming into the new colonies. Let me refresh your memory in terms of time frame, because at the time the colonies are already established, let's not forget that the Spanish conquista is done. The Spanish conquistadores are done wiping out most of the Aztecs, and now they're moving into colonial times. But most of the images that came to the colonies from Mexico came from de las Casas, Acosta, and Lopez de Gomora, as you are going to read. The English learned from these writers how the indigenous people and the Mexican people were being portrayed. You also have the book of History of the America by Robertson, who portrayed the Mexican indigenous as morally, intellectually, and physically defective. So once again, you have all this mass literature that has been read in the colonies. Why this is really important? Because by the time 1820s comes into the picture, you have Anglo-Americans settling in Texas, and they already have all these preconceived ideas about how Mexico and the indigenous population of Mexico look like. To circle back, because what we saw on January 6th, a map of President Donald Trump's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol. The violence was motivated by right-wing conspiracy theories, white nationalist movement, and Trump's own rhetoric. So, Trump's administration, we saw an increase in domestic terrorist attacks linked by hateful ideologies that thrives online. So we can go back 500 years ago, and we continue to see these ideologies that permeates our society. It's really important to bring the past into the present, because none of this rhetoric has gone away one bit, and there's a lot of work that it needs to be done. I hope you enjoy the literature, and on to the next.